Hello, I'm Liz Lumley of Finextra, and we're here at EBA Day in Amsterdam. And today I'm speaking to Sehr of Deutsche Bank. Now, you've guys come off the stage here at EBA Day talking about the future for transaction banking. And the banking industry as a whole is dealing with huge generational shifts. The young people today who use a lot of online banking, don't call into call centers, they're the future corporate treasurers. Are banks anticipating how to meet the needs of their future customers?
Yes, they're absolutely looking at the needs, and I think when you said the Generation Y is becoming the corporate treasurer of tomorrow, I think if they're changing their roles from a private consumer into somebody who's running the treasury function of a company, they are also shifting a little bit their buying behavior and other things become more relevant for them. And that's something which we will embed also in our product offering. Of course, they're used to have their mobile devices and they probably want to have their mobile devices also when they're in their working environment. But it doesn't mean that they have the same need of, for example, making micropayments. If they become the treasurer of a big corporate or even managing a financial institution, there are different needs which we have to deal with. So one is, for example, that they need some kind of support when it comes to intraday liquidity management, which was not so important to them when they were Generation Y.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Transaction banking for a long time has been a very stable source of revenue for banks, and of course, changing to meet customer needs takes a certain level of investment. Are banks meeting that right level of investment right at the moment?
I think it depends. So when I look at our organization, we just have confirmed our commitment to transaction banking, and we have stated that we are going to invest an incremental 1 billion in terms of IT spend over the next 5 years. Clearly, this environment in transaction banking requires a lot of investment in technology. And this is driven by a number of things. One is that we are living in a very vibrant environment, not only here at EBA Day where the people are sitting and standing around us, but also in the transaction banking where I see the 3 centers of gravity we have to deal as transaction bankers with. One is the changing macro environment, where we clearly have new elements, like for example in these days the negative interest rate environment, which is for many banks quite a huge challenge because what has worked in the past, the more the better, is no longer working in these days. Then we have a lot of change in the overall banking environment. Just to mention the keyword Basel III, but also TLAC and others are quite prominent. Banking separation, another example, which will also change the way banks operate in the future and will be set up in the future. And last but not least, there's a number of rules and regulations and market infrastructure initiatives which will require us in the transaction banking space to further invest in that business. XML, one example, intraday liquidity reporting, another example, and everything then which goes in the direction of instant or faster payments is clearly another element where we need to revamp the existing IT landscape, not just as an institution, but also as an industry, because it's always front to back.
How is the industry dealing with change right now over the next 5 to 6 years?
I think there will be a lot of change, and I see 3 centers of gravity. One is clearly the macro element, the other is the banking landscape, and the last is all the changes we see directly in the payment and transaction banking industry. How do we deal with that change? I think very simple. First of all, we have to monitor, observe what's going on. Then we have to assess this. And last but not least, we have to make our strategic directions. And we have to make our strategic decisions and we have to execute on them. Which means we have to understand who we are and who we are not. What can we do ourselves and where do we need to leverage a partner? And I think it's critical to stress that in this environment where you have multiple dimensions and a lot of interconnectivity, it's super important to really understand what you're not going to do in order to invest the money in the things you're pretty convinced that they will add value to your customer base, and then really invest into that in order to ensure that you stay invested in the future.